My first semester at college was the loneliest time of my life. Until I got assigned a roommate. She was quiet, polite, and always there when I needed someone. But what I discovered weeks later still haunts my nightmares. I was never assigned a roommate at all. I remember move-in day vividly. Rain poured from a gray sky as I dragged my boxes into Wellington Hall. The corridor reeked of instant ramen and cheap air freshener, while anxious freshmen said tearful goodbyes to their parents. Room 317 was standard college depression. Cinder block walls, narrow beds, worn desks, but one side wasn't empty. The bed against the far wall had a neatly folded gray blanket. The desk held psychology textbooks arranged by size. A white mug with Introverts Unite Separately sat perfectly centered on a coaster. That night, the door creaked open behind me. She stood in the doorway, silhouetted by hallway light. Small frame, long, dark hair, unnervingly pale. "You must be my roommate," I said, extending my hand. Her fingers were ice cold when she finally took it. "Aria," she whispered, "psychology major." She didn't ask my name, didn't make small talk, just gave me that slight half smile that never reached her eyes before gliding to her bed. She sat cross-legged, back straight, hands folded in her lap, waiting. I remember thinking she seemed old, not physically, but her eyes held something ancient, patient, still, like she'd been waiting a very long time. As days passed, disturbing patterns emerged. Aria was always in our room. When I left for breakfast, she'd be reading on her bed. When I returned hours later, she'd be in the exact same position. Sometimes the book changed. Usually it didn't. I never saw her eat. Never saw her leave for class. Never saw her use the bathroom. "Don't you have classes today?" I asked on Thursday. She looked up from her book on cognitive therapy and tilted her head. "They're flexible with me," she murmured before returning to reading. By the weekend, the night episodes started. I'd wake at exactly 3:17 a.m. every night to find Aria sitting upright in bed, rigid as a corpse, staring at the wall between us, whispering,
"Saverin, kalunetor, saidravet, shelevan, shelevan."
It wasn't English. It wasn't anything recognizable. Just the same pattern of sounds repeated over and over. No phone, no earbuds. Just her pale face in the moonlight, lips moving ceaselessly. She'd whisper for exactly 7 minutes. Then, like a music box winding down, she'd lower herself back onto her pillow and close her eyes. I didn't sleep after that. By the third week, my unease had crystallized into something colder. I never saw Aria anywhere but our room. Never in the dining hall. Never at mandatory floor meetings. It was like she existed only within those four walls. On Tuesday, I deliberately returned between classes, bursting into the room unannounced, empty. Her bed was made with hospital corners. Her books perfectly aligned. I exhaled with relief, so she did leave sometimes. But as I turned to go, I caught something in the window reflection. Someone sitting on Aria's bed. I spun around. The bed was empty. That afternoon, I cornered my RA, Mackenzie, in the laundry room. "Hey, Mac, you know my roommate, right?" "Aria?" Mac looked up, forehead creased. "In 317? I nodded, cold sweat tracing down my spine. "Honey," she said slowly, "that room is registered as a single. You don't have a roommate." The fluorescent lights suddenly seemed too harsh. "That's impossible," I stammered. "She's been there since move-in day." "Aria, psychology major, long, dark hair?" Mac's expression shifted from confusion to concern. She called housing while I stood there, my lungs forgetting how to work. "Housing says you're the only one assigned to that room," she said gently after hanging up. "There is no Aria." That night, I waited until Aria was in her usual position before slipping out under the pretense of getting water. I checked our storage bin downstairs. One set of winter boots, one extra blanket, one box of Christmas decorations, all mine. When I returned, Aria was gone. Perfect timing. I searched her side frantically. Her desk drawers contained only the same psychology books. Her closet held the same outfits, evenly spaced. No laptop, no phone, no toiletries. I picked up her mug and looked inside. Bone dry, with a thin layer of dust like it had never been used. I froze as the door handle turned. Aria stood in the doorway, expression vacant. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice somehow filling the entire room. "Looking for aspirin," I lied, voice cracking. "You won't find any," she said, gliding to her bed. "I don't get headaches." That night I lay awake, listening, focusing, realizing I couldn't hear her breathe at all. At exactly 3:17 a.m., 3 soft knocks jolted me from half sleep. Heart pounding, I opened the door to an empty hallway. When I turned back, my blood froze. Aria's bed was empty, perfectly made, not a wrinkle in sight, like it had never been slept in at all. The next morning, I went straight to the housing office, unwashed and exhausted. "I need to see the records for room 317, I said, voice hoarse. About my roommate. The woman frowned but typed into her computer. According to our system, you're in a single room, she said. There's no roommate assigned to 317. I gripped the counter to stay upright. She's been there since day one. Aria, psychology student. The woman typed again, then stopped. Something changed in her face. Did you say Aria in 317? I nodded, chills sweeping over me. She glanced around and lowered her voice. There was an Aria in that room 2 years ago. She withdrew from school after her roommate died. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. Died? My voice sounded distant. Accidental overdose. Prescription medication. She hesitated. The roommate had been struggling with depression. What was her name? I asked, already feeling the answer forming in my gut. That file's sealed. She forced a smile. But look, you're not in danger. Old buildings like Wellington have history. Sometimes that history lingers. She leaned closer. Probably just a ghost story. Wellington has plenty of those. I walked back in a daze, rain soaking through my clothes, mind racing through every odd detail about Aria. When I reached room 317, she sat cross-legged on her bed, dark hair hanging in damp waves around her pale face. She looked up, eyes holding mine for a long moment, then said, "You went to housing today." Not a question. I stood frozen, water dripping onto the floor. "You're not real," I whispered. For the first time, genuine emotion crossed her face. Profound sadness that seemed to age her instantly. "I'm as real as I need to be," she said softly. "Who are you? Why are you here?" Aria closed her book and set it aside. "I didn't want to be alone again," she said, voice suddenly clearer than I'd ever heard it. Neither of us did. As I watched, paralyzed, Aria began to dissolve. Her outline blurred like watercolors in rain, starting at her edges, working inward. "Wait!" I cried. "What happened in this room?" Her form continued fading, but her eyes remained fixed on mine. "Look under the bed," she whispered, her voice seeming to come from everywhere. "Under the frame." Then, she was gone. Nothing remained except the fading indentation on her mattress. With shaking hands, I dropped to my knees and peered under the bed frame. At first, I saw nothing but dust. Then I saw it. Black marker on the metal, partially hidden. Aria and Kaylee, room 317, friends forever. Kaylee. My name is Kaylee. I researched that night, huddled in the library until closing. Aria Winters and Kaylee Chen, roommates in 317 2 years ago. Kaylee, the other Kaylee, had died of an accidental overdose. Antidepressants, described as quiet and reserved. Aria found her, dropped out a week later, never returned. But something of her remained, watching, waiting. I changed rooms the next day. But sometimes, passing Wellington at dusk, I look up at the third-floor window, and I see her silhouette, cross-legged, watching, waiting for the next lonely soul. I sleep with the light on now, and sometimes, in the darkest hours, I hear whispering, not from the walls, from inside my head, in a voice that sounds eerily like my own. Have you ever sensed a presence that shouldn't be there? Someone watching when you're supposedly alone? Comment below with your unexplainable roommate experiences. And before you sleep tonight, check under your bed frame. You never know who might be watching you read the names written there.